Hey, welcome back to Kult of Athena's YouTube channel. I'm your host, Tom. Today we're looking at another one from Landsknecht Emporium. This gigantic beast of a blade is the Rotmilan Kriegmesser. So we just did the Messer, the Adorian Messer. Make sure to check that one out from Landsknecht Emporium as well. Here are some specs, up close looks, and yes, we are going to do cut testing with this massive blade. Okay, so kind of piggybacking off of that and really using that into our first impressions on this one. First of all, Landsknecht Emporium, incredible. They do a great job with war knives, with Messers. They really have a niche with Messers. I'm sure they can perform and, you know, bang out a lot of different blades. But what they seem to focus on is Messers from what I've seen and what I've personally reviewed on them. So make sure to check them out at kultofathena.com. They do a lot of unique stuff that I haven't seen other companies do. Their intention is not to do replicas. That is not their intention at all. Their intention is to do historically accurate weapons so that you're getting something that it's not going to be perfectly polished as you're going to see in some of theirs. I'm not saying anything's going to be loose on it. I'm saying that some of these around the nail, which if you're not familiar with what the nail is, it's this little knob right here. Boop. That thing is to protect your hand so that somebody can't draw cut and come down to your hand. And when you're into a bind in whatever position you're going to be in, that outside section of your hand is protected from glancing and from draw cuts. There's just some marks on it of like, this is how they would have looked, because this is a tool for a very specific purpose way back in history in that specific scenario. So some really unique things here. This is a full tang. You're gonna see it's a meaty tang, and this is a 3-pound 6-ounce war knife or sword. So if I use sword in conjunction, it's just because it's gonna do the same thing, whether you call it a war knife or you call it a sword. This thing has one real purpose. So some unique things as well on the pommel. This is a peen pommel. Of course, you're gonna get a lot of up close looks as well. We have a peen pommel. You see this lips up on one side and one side only. So you see the little hook. Whoop. You see that in Southeast Asian swords, we just call it the hook, or just the little J grip in the handle. It's really cool. That's going to assist with that left hand. That way you don't glance off, because if it was the other way, so now the main edge is facing down, that's going to slide right off, rather than having that little notch, which it's like, that doesn't matter. It's like, yeah, it does, because if you're cutting, with a lot of force, you want that hook. And I'm actually surprised that more straight, well, this one isn't perfectly straight, it has a little bit of a curve to it, but I am surprised with how many different reviews I've done where I'm like, damn, like, I wish some of these other swords I've reviewed that are in this category, that they would have this hook, because it would significantly improve the grip. But if it's not historically accurate, it's totally cool. There's a swelled tip, meaning that the tip is reinforced, it's thicker, so that was intended so that if you were to thrust something, that the tip would not snap off, especially if you kind of bent it, because nobody's going to go perfectly into a thrust in and out. There might be a little bit of movement, especially if I have to thrust and then pull this out, so it's less likely for the tip to break. That's the way that they've built this thing. And then again, just kind of thinking about it, like, I really like the handle, by the way. The Adorian Messer that we did as well, which I'm gonna grab in a second, it has this little cutout. You can see that in the shadow, the cutout here, and that cutout onto the finger pads, kind of like you're playing guitar actually. So that bites into the hand, which again, a very subtle feature, but something that is significant when it comes to how many different transitions you're gonna go through guards, the momentum on cut, and overall not really having to worry about your grip. It's not something you really want to be thinking about. Just as a little side note, the top edge on this one, or the false edge, is 10 inches. So from this point, so I'm not putting my finger on the sharp part, but from this point to the point, that's 10 inches of a top edge. So that was used, you know, you can use that on draw cuts, you know, on either side. Probably going to be more on this side because this is a weaker position than you pulling it back through. You can start using the back edge into things like tears. Which people say you can't do, but I'm going to do it in the Tommy Mac cut testing. So we are going to cut with this one. First impressions, this thing moves like a short spear. It's got a lot of range to it. It's really impressive, and it's adaptable. I can use those large cuts. I can be a little bit more nimble and start darting with the thrust, where I can start using this while you would a short spear. But I can still parry with this. I can still get into the different parries and different blade contact positions. I can go into thrusting and start to cut around and still use all the primary positions that you would see in longsword. This thing I have cut with and moved with is the Danish war axe from Arms and Armor. An Armor Hungarian axe today. Hungarian war axe. I did a video on that a couple years ago and the cut testing with it. That thing is beautiful, and that's the closest thing I can compare this to as a pole arm. So it's pretty neat, really, really awesome. And let's do some up close looks at this one so we can see some more of the unique features that builds the character of the Rotmilan Kriegmesser. All right, take a look at the cut testing with the Rotmilan Kriegmesser. I do all the cut testing on a separate day. That way I can get the best cuts I possibly can. We're gonna experiment with reverse cuts, and we're gonna kind of just see what we get into with it. I also am planning on doing some back of the blade, some tears with it, because it's got a 10-inch back edge, so we're gonna play with that. Let's take a look at the cut testing with this Kriegmesser. False edge strikes work. This is one shot. So top edge strike, pretty happy with that. Let's work a little bit more and experiment with some other cuts. Ooh, not a good cut. Uh-oh, gotta recover. Went a little bit too vertical for me because I didn't release the left hand soon enough. You know, rather than me coming here and getting the lift and letting the weapon follow through, what I ended up doing was, because I stepped across and I kept my left hand on here. See how this is coming too narrow? That's why the cut became so narrow, because I'm trying to do basically a vertical cut and run diagonally, which what I wanted to do was bring this up and then let this fall so I can cut diagonally and run diagonally, which is why on that second cut, when I came through, I stepped and I was able to follow all the way through and then come back to guard. That's what I mean by the movement on this, is that left hand is optional. So treating this kind of more like a pole arm, you know, even into the single-handed grip, using that grip when you need to use it, you know, but not necessarily being married to a two-handed grip. It's used when necessary. Thanks for joining me for this review of the Rotmilan Kriegmesser from Landsknecht Emporium. This thing was a lot of fun to train with, a lot of fun to cut with, and I would put it in the category of I've never really trained with something like this. Even the Balor arms Kriegmesser that I cut with, I believe about a year and a half ago. It doesn't feel anything like this. So Landsknecht Emporium has done a really great job on the little details that end up being like pretty significant details in the way that these blades handle. So really impressive with that. If you want something gigantic that's also very versatile and unique, pick up the Rotmilan Kriegmesser by clicking the link in the description below this video. If you want something a little bit more robust and something that is more close quarter, you may want the Dorian Messer, also from Landsknecht Emporium. The link for that will also be in the description below this video. I'm your host Tom for Kult of Athena's YouTube channel. Make sure to subscribe to the channel. Click the bell to get notified of new reviews on our YouTube channel. Follow us on TikTok and on Instagram. And I'll see you in the next review.